The Texas sun was beginning to slide behind the skyline as I waited in the pickup lane outside Noah's Montessori School in East Austin. My air conditioner hissed softly, while the white noise of car engines and squeaky strollers filled the background. My fingers tapped at the steering wheel, half distracted, half exhausted. I was 36, a full-time UX designer and full-time single parent in everything but paperwork. David, my husband of 9 years, had left that morning for what he called a wellness retreat for startup founders, something in the Arizona desert with no Wi-Fi, just ice baths and ayahuasca nonsense. It didn't sit right with me, but I'd waved him off like a good wife does. That was around 6 a.m. By 4:12 p.m., I was waiting for my son to come out with a dinosaur sticker on his hand and a half-finished watercolor in his backpack. That's when I saw it. A buzz came from the iPad in the passenger seat, David's, left behind by mistake. Probably intentional, if I'm honest. He hated when I asked what he was doing on it. The screen lit up. One line of text. The plane's booked. Tell Cam we're over once I'm in Madrid. Thanks for the apartment. My throat closed. My name, Cam. Madrid? The air in the car thinned. I reached for the iPad like it was evidence from a crime scene, hands shaking. The message came from Jules, the same former design intern I mentored 2 years ago. The same intern who suddenly became David's project manager after pivoting into product. I knew that name. I knew that tone. I knew that this was not a wellness retreat. I didn't cry. Not in that moment. Not with my son about to come skipping toward me with a Lego creation in hand and jelly stains on his shirt. Noah spotted me through the windshield and grinned. He waved with both hands, his curls bouncing. I plastered on a smile, so wide it made my cheekbones hurt. Hey, buddy. I chirped, too loud. How was your art project? We made galaxies, he shouted, climbing into the back seat. And I got a gold star for being quiet. It felt like a cruel joke from the universe. That night, while Noah built a spaceship in the living room, I poured myself a glass of wine and went to unpack the gym bag David left behind, just to feel something real, I guess. And there it was. A one-way ticket to Madrid, booked 2 weeks ago, in his legal name, departing in 3 days. No return flight. No wellness center. Just a printed itinerary with a hotel address in Spain and a second name, Jules Marchand. I stood there, glass trembling in my hand, watching my reflection in the hallway mirror. It didn't look like me. It looked like a woman who was about to lose everything, unless she made the first move. The Texas sun was beginning to slide behind the skyline as I waited in the pickup lane outside Noah's Montessori School in East Austin. My air conditioner hissed softly, while the white noise of car engines and squeaky strollers filled the background. My fingers tapped at the steering wheel, half distracted, half exhausted. I was 36, a full-time UX designer and full-time single parent in everything but paperwork. David, my husband of 9 years, had left that morning for what he called a wellness retreat for startup founders, something in the Arizona desert with no Wi-Fi, just ice baths and ayahuasca nonsense. It didn't sit right with me, but I'd waved him off like a good wife does. That was around 6 a.m. By 4:12 p.m., I was waiting for my son to come out with a dinosaur sticker on his hand and a half-finished watercolor in his backpack. That's when I saw it. A buzz came from the iPad in the passenger seat, David's, left behind by mistake. Probably intentional, if I'm honest. He hated when I asked what he was doing on it. The screen lit up. One line of text. The plane's booked. Tell Cam we're over once I'm in Madrid. Thanks for the apartment. My throat closed. My name, Cam. Madrid? The air in the car thinned. I reached for the iPad like it was evidence from a crime scene, hands shaking. The message came from Jules, the same former design intern I mentored 2 years ago. The same intern who suddenly became David's project manager after pivoting into product. I knew that name. I knew that tone. I knew that this was not a wellness retreat. I didn't cry. Not in that moment. Not with my son about to come skipping toward me with a Lego creation in hand and jelly stains on his shirt. Noah spotted me through the windshield and grinned. He waved with both hands, his curls bouncing. I plastered on a smile, so wide it made my cheekbones hurt. Hey, buddy. I chirped, Too loud. How was your art project? We made galaxies, he shouted, climbing into the back seat. And I got a gold star for being quiet. It felt like a cruel joke from the universe. That night, while Noah built a spaceship in the living room, I poured myself a glass of wine and went to unpack the gym bag David left behind, just to feel something real, I guess. And there it was. A one-way ticket to Madrid. Booked 2 weeks ago. In his legal name. Departing in 3 days. No return flight. No wellness center. Just a printed itinerary with a hotel address in Spain and a second name. Jules Marchand. I stood there, glass trembling in my hand, watching my reflection in the hallway mirror. It didn't look like me. It looked like a woman who was about to lose everything. Unless she made the first move. I didn't sleep that night. I lay awake with Noah's stuffed dinosaur crammed under my shoulder, the whir of the ceiling fan spinning too fast, too loud. By morning, my body was exhausted, but my brain had become something else entirely. Cold, sharp, calculating. First stop, the bank app. I sat at the kitchen table, the light from my phone casting shadows across Noah's cereal bowl. Joint checking, $197. Savings, 0. Emergency fund, closed. And worse, my own credit card had been maxed out. Someone had used it to pay for international tickets, Airbnb deposits, and an all-inclusive eco-villa in Costa Rica under the name Jules Marchand. I felt bile rise in my throat. It was like watching someone burn your life down from a distance, and knowing they'd planned the bonfire using your own matches. I called the bank. The woman on the line had a voice like elevator music, soft, apologetic, entirely unhelpful. Because it's a joint account, Mrs. Dupree, there's technically no violation. He had full access. Even if he lied about where he was going? I asked, pacing the floor, glancing to make sure Noah was still immersed in Bluey. Intent doesn't change ownership, ma'am. I'm sorry. Intent. His intent was to disappear. And leave us with less than $200 and a stack of unpaid bills. I emailed David. Nice itinerary. You really should have locked the iPad. Don't worry, I'll let Noah know his dad's too busy with ayahuasca and Betrayal to FaceTime this week. No reply. Then came the call from an unknown number. I picked up, not thinking. Camille Dupree? Speaking. This is Marcia Price from Rosedale Family Law. I'm calling to confirm you received the preliminary divorce documents filed by David Dupree. I'm sorry, what? She repeated it, this time slower, like she was delivering a death sentence. David had filed for divorce 2 days before he left for Arizona. He'd also filed for sole custody of Noah in a county 2 hours outside our jurisdiction, a legal trick used to manipulate court schedules and sympathetic judges. He cited parental instability and medicated mental health conditions as cause. I nearly dropped the phone. What documents? I asked. Where were they sent? To your husband's temporary address in Madrid, she said flatly. That was the moment my hands started trembling. Let me pause here to tell you something plainly. This wasn't a man cheating. This was a man erasing us. He wanted a clean break. No custody battles, no alimony, no financial support. And if he could paint me as unstable, bonus points. What he didn't know was that the school tuition, all of it, had been run through my LLC. My name, my address, my business account. That meant legal domicile in the eyes of the court belonged to me, not to the man filing papers across the Atlantic. By midnight, I had gathered screenshots of his iPad messages, his travel itinerary, a copy of the tuition contract with my signature, and the start of a digital folder titled David's Disappearance, Evidence. Noah was asleep, hugging a glow-in-the-dark moon plushie. And I, Camille Dupree, was no longer broken. The next morning, I called every family law office within 20 miles of Austin that opened before 9 a.m. Most were booked solid. A few told me gently that custody battles with international components were complicated. One even had the audacity to ask if I'd provoked the divorce. But then came Alyssa Kern, a woman who didn't just pick up her phone. She asked for receipts. Literally. You have bank transfers, text messages, and travel records? Yes. Bring coffee and a flash drive. I'll clear my lunch hour. That's how I found myself in her cramped office on East 5th, watching her flip through my digital folder like it was a murder mystery novel. He's not just leaving, she said, sipping her iced Americano. He's manufacturing your collapse. I nodded. My voice caught in my throat. I'm not unstable, I whispered. I take Lexapro. For anxiety. I have a therapist. But he's using that to build a custody narrative. I've seen it before, Alyssa said, sliding her glasses up her nose. But he made a mistake. Several, actually. She pointed to the school contract, tuition signed through my LLC. That's gold. You're the primary provider, and you control the legal address of your son's education. That gives us leverage. But the real bombshell came when I handed her David's old work laptop. He'd left it behind, probably assuming I didn't know the password. But I did. Of course I did. It was Noah's birth date plus his favorite Pokemon. Inside was a trove of emails, calendar invites, and cloud files, all hinting at a plan he'd been brewing for over a year. And one file in particular made Alyssa lean forward in her seat. Custody strategy, final docs. He'd written it like a marketing proposal. Frame Camille's anxiety as irrational. Document erratic behavior. Use Jules as witness. File in Behar County to delay response window. Use Madrid property as stability argument. It read like a playbook for parental theft. Is this enough? I asked, voice shaking. More than, Alyssa said, already drafting the emergency motion. We're going to file for a restraining order, freeze joint assets, and request immediate custody enforcement. He thought he'd ghost you. He's about to meet the ghost of legal consequences. I left her office not feeling victorious, but visible, like I wasn't just someone being discarded. I was someone dangerous to forget. Back at home, Noah was watching cartoons, wrapped in a blanket, asking when Daddy would be back with his travel gift. I swallowed my heart. He's on a really long trip, sweetheart, I said, brushing his curls. But we've got a big adventure, too. I meant it. We weren't victims. We were rebuilding command of the narrative. The next day, I showed up to Noah's school, not just as a parent, but as a woman on a mission. I asked for 10 minutes with the school director, Ms. Rosenthal. She was the kind of woman who wore flowing scarves and used phrases like emotional vocabulary when speaking about 5-year-olds. Is everything all right with Noah? She asked, eyes softening. Not with him, I said. With his father. I laid out the basics. Not the gory betrayal, but enough for her to understand. David had filed for sole custody behind my back, citing instability and environmental concerns. He'd also told the court he was the primary caregiver and that he enrolled Noah at the school. Ms. Rosenthal blinked at that. I personally handled Noah's admission packet, she said. And I'm almost certain, yes, here, your name. Your LLC is on the tuition records. I smiled for the first time that day. Would you be willing to confirm that in writing? If it helps protect Noah's stability, of course. She also reminded me of something I hadn't considered. You listed a backup contact when you first enrolled him, not David. It was your cousin, right? My jaw went slack. Yes. Because David had been too busy to attend the enrollment meeting, I had listed my cousin Margot as the backup guardian. That meant something legally. In the school's files, I wasn't just primary. I was Noah's only official parent of record. Another pillar crumbled in David's fraudulent custody narrative. That afternoon, Alyssa filed our first emergency order. Immediate freeze of all domestic accounts linked to our names. Court challenge to jurisdictional overreach in the out-of-county filing. A request for protective relief against defamatory claims related to my mental health. Then came the cherry on top. David's email notifications, still linked to our shared Apple ID, pinged me. One subject line caught my attention. Verification of employment, Horizon International, Camille Dupree. Wait, what? I opened the preview. My jaw dropped. David had attempted to forward my resume, along with a copy of our divorce proceedings and custody papers, to a tech firm in Barcelona. He had edited the documents to make it look like I was the unstable one, filing fake complaints, withholding Noah, and even chasing him across Europe. In short, he tried to get me blacklisted from an international job opportunity one hadn't even applied for. I took screenshots of everything, forwarded them to Alyssa. She replied in seconds. That's defamation. And impersonation. He just stepped into criminal territory. By bedtime, I'd packed away all of Noah's baby albums, changed every password tied to my name, and pulled out an old sketch pad I hadn't touched in years. On the first blank page, I wrote, "You tried to ghost a woman with a paper trail. Now watch what I do with it." It was 10:47 p.m. when my phone buzzed. David.
Not a text this time.
A FaceTime request. I hesitated, just long enough to wonder what mask he'd wear today. The contrite lover, the gaslighter, or the good dad making excuses. I answered. And there he was. Beach behind him. Linen shirt. Hair messily perfect. A wine glass just out of frame.
He looked tan.
Relaxed. Like Betrayal was just another version of Vacation. "Camille," he said, smiling like we were old friends. "You look good. You look tan." His smile thinned just slightly. "How's Noah?"
Sleeping.
"You would have known if you'd called sooner." A pause. "Listen, I know this all feels sudden. You forged documents and drained our savings," I said flatly. "Sudden is what happens when someone dies. This is a slow-motion con job." His nostrils flared. "I didn't forge anything. I used what was necessary to establish residency and protect myself." "From what?" "Shared groceries and preschool invoices." "From your volatility, Camille," he said, leaning in, his voice slipping into that therapist speak he loved so much. "You know you haven't been stable. The anxiety, the meds, the crying spells after your father passed. You documented my grief," I snapped. "Weaponized it. Don't act like you cared while you were drafting a custody strategy and booking Ocean View properties with Jules." The mask cracked. Just a flash of it. "I only did what I had to do. You would have done the same in my position." "Funny," I said. "I was never in Spain trying to erase my son's mother." He leaned back, smug again.
"Look.
You'll get something. A portion. I'm not cruel. But if you drag this out..." "You'll what?" I asked. "Get creative with the truth?" "I'll get legal," he said. I smiled then. Not politely. Not gently. Too late. Then I ended the call. The next morning, Alyssa filed a formal motion to disclose David's communications and financial assets abroad. We also submitted an affidavit from Noah's school director verifying I was sole parent of record. Screenshots of the FaceTime call. David had graciously allowed his reflection in a wine glass next to Jules' laptop. "Thank you for that." And a recording of our conversation, with his voice admitting to doing what he had to and referencing the custody plan. By mid-afternoon, the county clerk had authorized a hearing, not just to challenge his filing, but to formally transfer jurisdiction back to our county, where Noah had lived, schooled, and played for 5 uninterrupted years. David had 72 hours to respond, and the clock was ticking. But just when I thought I had the upper hand, the universe served me a twist. I received a notification from USPS Informed Delivery, a package from Spain, with no return address. I'll take you into it next. The envelope was matte black. No postage stamps. Just international barcodes and the unmistakable whiff of pretension. Inside, a handwritten letter on thick, ivory stock and a flash drive tucked into a padded sleeve. The handwriting was unmistakably David's. Clean, deliberate, emotionally sterile. He always wrote like a man trying to prove he could feel. "Camille, I know you're angry, hurt, maybe even vindictive. But this doesn't have to get messy. Jules and I are working things out here in Madrid. I've spoken to a lawyer. Spain's family courts favor stability and continuity. I've already filed a custody motion here. You'll be served soon. You can either cooperate or make this difficult for everyone, especially Noah. Enclosed is everything you need to start over. Consider it a gesture of goodwill. David." I stared at the flash drive, debating whether it was booby-trapped or just insulting. I opened it. Inside were 3 folders. Camille_expenses, which hilariously included screenshots of grocery store receipts. Therapy notes, as if quoting my own intake forms would prove instability. And one titled Barcelona Clause PDF. That last one made me pause. I clicked. It was a lease agreement between David Caldwell and a property in Madrid. But in the fine print was something startling. Tenant shall not claim primary residence of any dependent minor not listed in Appendix A. I scrolled to Appendix A. It was blank. He had rented the property without listing Noah. In other words, David's lease proved he had no legal intent to establish his son as a resident of Spain, which meant every claim he made to Spanish family court built on a lie. I sent it all to Alyssa, who called me 15 minutes later with one word: checkmate. We'd file a motion to submit the lease as evidence of fraudulent intent. We'd show that David lied to foreign courts, that his custody claims were deliberately misleading, and that his case in Spain should be nullified at the root. But that wasn't all. Buried in the therapy notes folder was a screenshot of a calendar app logged into Jules' account. It showed a saved event for embassy interview, Noah, scheduled 2 weeks from now. My blood went cold. He was going to try to apply for a passport for Noah without my consent, using fabricated documents, probably with Jules posing as the mother. This was no longer just betrayal. It was kidnapping in slow motion. And I was done playing polite. The next morning, we filed an emergency injunction to block any travel or passport processing for Noah. Alyssa also contacted the State Department to flag David's name for international custody interference. My son would not be leaving the country. Not with Jules. Not with David. Not on my watch. The message came at 2:14 a.m. An unknown number. A single line of text. You don't know the half of it. Call me back or listen to the recording. Attached was a voice memo file labeled for Camille MP3. Now, I'm not one to trust cryptic 2 a.m. messages, especially not from the other woman. But curiosity and cortisol have a way of collaborating at that hour. I hit play. It was Jules. And her voice didn't sound like someone in love. It sounded like someone unraveling. Camille, this is Jules. And before you delete this, please know, I didn't know. I swear I didn't know how far he was going. David told me you'd agreed to joint custody, that you were okay with the move, that you were moving on. He showed me edited emails, fabricated letters from your attorney. He said you were unstable, and I believed him. She sniffled, the kind of sniffle that sounds more like shame than sorrow. But then he asked me to forge my signature on some embassy documents. Pretend to be Noah's guardian while he finalized things. I said no. That's when he snapped. Called me a complication. Started hiding his phone. Sleeping on the couch. I went through his files. Camille, he has more than one identity. He's using an alias for some of the accounts. I took pictures of everything. I'll send them. Please don't come after me. I just want out. And I think you deserve to win. I sat in the dark, heart pounding. Not because I pitied her, but because, for the first time, I had a witness inside the lie. Jules wasn't just backing out. She was blowing it all up for me inside. True to her word, 10 minutes later, I received a Dropbox link titled David_lies_folder. Inside, photos of bank statements under an alias, Nolan Davis. Copies of wire transfers from his hidden freelance contracts. A second attempt at creating a falsified custody agreement, with Jules' name photoshopped in as co-signee. This wasn't just betrayal. It was felony-grade document fraud. I forwarded everything to Alyssa. Her reply was quick, clipped, and delicious. We're done playing defense. He's going to lose everything: custody, credibility, and his European dream. By sunrise, Alyssa had filed for a criminal investigation into identity fraud and forgery, a formal request for court-supervised discovery of David's digital accounts, a freeze on any assets tied to aliases or pseudonymous tax IDs. Oh, and we also subpoenaed Jules, now listed as a cooperative witness. David tried to fire off a warning text at 8:03 a.m. You've made this worse than it had to be. My reply was simple. Good. You made it criminal when you involved my son. It was a Thursday morning when I got the call from Alyssa. Camille, the summons is out. The judge fast-tracked the hearing. He wants David in court by next week. I blinked. Next week. He won't be ready, and we'll be 3 moves ahead. I almost smiled. Almost. But that smile soured the moment another notification hit my inbox. It was from the U.S. Passport Agency. Subject line: Minor passport application. Consent verification required. I clicked. Someone had submitted a passport request for Noah, flagged for manual review due to discrepancies in parental signatures. There was a scanned document attached. My name was on it, but I had never signed it. And whoever had tried to mimic my signature hadn't just failed. They'd insulted it. The fake Camille was loopier, messier, and betrayed a left-handed tilt I didn't have. It wasn't Jules. It was David. He'd gotten cocky. And now he was dumb enough to leave a forged government document in my inbox. I didn't panic. I didn't even flinch. I did what any mother-turned-legal lioness would do. I printed the document, drove straight to the local passport office, and calmly, methodically explained that the woman listed here as Camille Reynolds was not me. The passport officer, a no-nonsense woman named Maria, scanned it. Then scanned me. You say the signature's forged? Yes, and if I had to guess? The man who submitted it is currently hiding in Spain, dodging family court and federal fraud charges. She raised an eyebrow. You'd be surprised how often this happens. No, I said. I wouldn't. Maria filed an immediate fraud report and flagged Noah's application with a permanent hold. She also helped me lock down a do not issue alert with Homeland Security, meaning if anyone so much as tried to get Noah on a flight, they'd trigger a federal alarm. By that afternoon, Alyssa was on fire. This changes everything, she said. Not only did he attempt to falsify consent, he left a digital trail. It's government level now. She filed an amended complaint, added federal passport fraud, attached the forged application as Exhibit C, requested an emergency bench warrant for David's return to the U.S. on grounds of endangering a minor. And that's when things got cinematic. Because the judge granted it, David was now 1. A wanted man in the eyes of family court. 2. Under federal investigation. 3. And barred from entering or exiting the U.S. without tripping every alarm between here and Interpol. I imagine his fancy Madrid mornings started to taste a little more bitter. And me? I started sleeping with my phone on silent again. Because I knew the next time it rang, it wouldn't be David bluffing. It would be the system calling in the debt. Her perfume hit the hallway before she did. That vaguely herbal, old money scent. Like sage, soap, and 100 years of generational privilege. Margaret Reynolds, David's mother, and the last person I expected to see seated, cross legs, cashmere shawl, designer grief, outside my lawyer's office. I stopped.
Cold.
She smiled like a woman who believed in forgiveness so long as it served her. Camille, she cooed. You look resilient. You look rehearsed. I shot back. Her smile barely flickered. She'd flown in from Charleston. To help clarify matters, she said. And by that, she meant to stop the sinking ship before the court subpoenaed her name next. What she didn't know, Alyssa had already done it. Inside the office, Alyssa arched an eyebrow like she was watching a car crash in a ball gown. So, Margaret, you asked for this meeting. Let's hear it. Margaret cleared her throat. I'm not here to defend what David did. But he's my son, and I know he's made mistakes. Fraud isn't a mistake, I snapped. It's a felony. Margaret blinked, but she didn't deny it. Instead, she pulled a manila envelope from her tote and slid it across the table. Bank records, emails, voice memos, including one where David admits to forging the custody papers. Alyssa leaned forward. Why are you giving us this? Because I didn't come to save him, Margaret said, her voice low. I came to save Noah. I almost laughed. This was the woman who once called me a temporary accessory to David's real life. Now she wanted to play savior? But Alyssa gave me a look that said, take the gift. Let the courtroom sort the motives. We scanned the files. And my stomach dropped. There it was. A recorded call between David and a notary in Spain, asking how to fast-track dual documentation for a minor. An email to a former coworker, boasting about his plan to use the passport system loophole. And a private note to Margaret, dated 3 weeks ago. If Camille doesn't cooperate, I'll go nuclear. I know how to make her look unstable. Just need you to say the word. Margaret hadn't just come to cooperate. She'd come to confess complicity. I stood. You helped him. I stopped helping when he asked me to lie in court, she said softly. I thought he was just escaping a bad marriage. I didn't know he'd try to erase his own child. Her voice cracked. And for the first time, I saw something unfamiliar in her eyes. Not just shame.
Fear.
She wasn't just trying to help me. She was trying to save herself. Alyssa, without missing a beat, said, "We'll call you as a witness. You'll testify under oath. You'll submit an affidavit admitting everything you enabled. No edits. No spin." Margaret nodded, defeated. "I'll do it." As she left, her cashmere brushing the doorframe, she turned to me. "You're a better mother than I ever gave you credit for." "No," I said. "I'm just the mother your son underestimated." And that was the moment I realized this wasn't just a courtroom drama. It was a dynasty collapse. It was raining in Madrid the morning David Reynolds tried to flee accountability. Again. According to the official report and unofficial tea from Jules, who was still feeding Alyssa anonymous updates, David booked a one-way flight back to the States on a whim. Word had spread. Interpol was sniffing. The judge in our case had issued a formal summons through diplomatic channels. And David? He thought he could get ahead of it all by voluntarily returning. As if we'd let him control the narrative. Here's what happened. He landed at JFK, jet-lagged, smug, probably rehearsing some tearful apology about putting his family back together. Instead, he was greeted by 2 U.S. Marshals and a court liaison holding a folder thicker than a divorce lawyer's worst nightmare. Charges served on arrival. Falsifying government documents. Attempted international abduction of a minor. Identity fraud via alias Nolan Davis. Passport application fraud. Conspiracy to defame a custodial parent. And, just for flavor, civil defamation and breach of fiduciary responsibility. David was still in customs when they slapped the cuffs on. Jules said he didn't even get to finish his complimentary biscotti. Meanwhile, I was in Portland, sipping coffee at a local cafe, when Alyssa called. "He's in custody." "Where?" "Holding cell at JFK. He'll be extradited to Oregon by Monday." "Did he say anything?" "Just one thing. He asked what made you so dangerous." I smiled. "Tell him it was underestimating a mother who has nothing left to lose." By Monday, David was seated across from us in family court, still in travel-wrinkled clothes, visibly shaken. Margaret didn't show. She'd already submitted her signed affidavit. And Jules? She'd sent a final bombshell, a secret voice recording where David laughs about creating fake mental health notes to use in court. That tape broke the judge's patience in half. "Mr. Reynolds," she said, voice steady like a blade, "you have not only defied this court, you've defrauded this system, this mother and your child. Full custody is awarded to Ms. Camille Reynolds, effective immediately. Mr. Reynolds, you are hereby ordered to undergo psychiatric evaluation before any consideration of visitation rights, supervised or otherwise. You are also subject to restitution payments for the funds misappropriated using false identities." Court adjourned. That gavel didn't just fall. It thundered. And when I looked over at David, all I saw was a man trapped in a cage he built himself. And me? I walked out of that courthouse, not just with custody. I walked out free. Because even when the storm ends, the echoes still carry. Continue? The sky over Portland had cracked open the morning after the hearing. Sunlight spilled through like it hadn't dared to in months. Noah was painting a dinosaur on the patio. I was watching him, coffee in hand, heart still a little raw around the edges, when my email chimed. Subject: Confirmation of court filing. From Horizon Global Legal Department. It was a follow-up. See, a month back, While building the case, Alyssa had contacted David's former employer, Horizon Global, the multinational PR firm he worked for in Spain. At the time, they said they couldn't comment on personnel matters.
Now?
They were singing like a canary in a thunderstorm. The email included a formal statement verifying that David had forged professional certifications to secure his Madrid posting, internal memos noting ethical concerns from colleagues, and one particularly damning attachment, an email from David to their HR department post-breakup, trying to frame me as mentally unstable and financially manipulative. He tried to send it anonymously, but his brilliant brain used a Gmail alias, with his Apple ID still visible in the metadata. A rookie move. And a fatal one. I forwarded the entire thread to Alyssa. Within the hour, she filed for a defamation countersuit, not just through family court, but in civil court as well. She CC'd me on the email to the judge. Your Honor, the defendant's intent to ruin my client's livelihood and reputation was premeditated, global, and malicious. And that's when I knew this wasn't just a court victory anymore. It was a systemic takedown of every lie, every con, every gaslighting phrase David had ever uttered through gritted teeth. But something strange happened that night. As I was cleaning out the junk drawer, you know the one, rubber bands, expired coupons, unmatched batteries, I found a flash drive. No label, no note, just red plastic and mystery. I plugged it in. There were only 2 folders. Camille. Noah's future. Inside, a series of documents, drafts of emails David had never sent. Old therapy notes. One half-finished letter addressed to me. It read, I thought I was building an escape, but really, I was burning a bridge I didn't know I'd need again. It ended there, unfinished, unsent, unworthy of forgiveness, but strangely closure. Noah called from the patio.
Mom.
My dinosaur has wings. I laughed. Of course it does. Anything's possible now. Let's burn down the last ivory tower. Margaret's time is up. There's a special kind of silence that comes after scandal. Not the kind you hear, but the kind that echoes in rooms full of pearls and Pinot. And Margaret? She was about to hear it loud and clear. 2 weeks after the custody hearing, Alyssa received a call from a reporter with a Portland Ledger. He was working on a story about domestic legal fraud and generational enablers. Alyssa, ever the legal tactician, agreed to an interview on background. She didn't drop names, but she did share the court transcripts. Guess whose name showed up again and again? Margaret Reynolds. The article dropped on a Tuesday.
Headline.
Custody, corruption, and the privilege to disappear. The hidden cost of white-collar family crimes. They didn't show her face. But they didn't need to, because by Wednesday, Margaret's world had already started to collapse. The Charleston Ridge Club, where Margaret held her wine tastings, chaired her philanthropy circles, and once hosted a charity gala themed Decency in Divorce, issued a public statement. Effective immediately, Mrs. Reynolds' membership has been suspended pending review of court records concerning ongoing identity fraud litigation. By Friday, she was out of her position on the club's board, out of her speaking engagement at the Modern Matriarchs Conference, and, according to Jules, ghosted by every woman in her weekly bridge circle. You could almost hear the clinking of pearls being removed. Margaret called me.
Once.
I didn't pick up. She left a voicemail. Camille, I hope you know I never meant to hurt Noah. I was just trying to protect something. I don't even know what anymore. I don't expect forgiveness, but I hope you'll allow space for understanding. I didn't delete the message, but I didn't respond either. Understanding is a luxury, and I was busy raising a son with truth, not manipulation. But the final blow? That came from her own son. David, who had previously begged her to testify on his behalf, sent her a cease and desist after discovering she leaked financials to Alyssa. You broke the family, mother, he wrote. To which Margaret replied, Jules forwarded me the text. No, David. You lit the match. I just stopped shielding you from the flames. And me? I booked a weekend at the coast. Just me, Noah, and the sound of waves that didn't lie, cheat, or steal. The ocean air had a way of washing things clean, especially guilt, anger, and the residue of courtrooms. Noah was collecting shells on the beach in his Spider-Man hoodie when my phone buzzed again. I almost didn't check it, but something about the subject line pulled at me. Design Director Offer, Seattle HQ. It was from Omnis Creative, the very agency I once interned for fresh out of college. The same agency that had passed me up when I scaled back to part-time after having Noah. The same agency that, until now, hadn't reached out in 10 years. The email read, Camille, we've followed your story through industry channels and, more importantly, your work. We're expanding into educational UX and nonprofit branding, and your portfolio speaks for itself. Would you be open to leading our Northwest team? Full remote flexibility, relocation optional, 3x your current rate. We're not just offering you a job. We're offering you your voice back. I sat down on a driftwood log, staring at the screen while Noah shouted something about a crab with angry eyebrows. This wasn't supposed to happen. I wasn't supposed to rise again this fast, not after courtrooms and custody wars and betrayal that stripped me bare. But it was happening, because I had built something of substance in the fire, and people noticed. That night, with Noah asleep in the B&B's loft and the wind howling like a story still being written, I wrote back, Thank you. I accept, on one condition. Let me build a mentorship track for women returning to creative careers post-trauma.
Not as charity.
As legacy. Their reply? You're already a better leader than we deserve.
Done.
I cried then. Not because of David. Not because of Margaret. But because something good was finally blooming without pain as its price. I updated my LinkedIn the next day. Camille Dupree, Design Director, Advocate for Mothers in Transition, Creator of Safe Spaces in Storytelling. I hit publish. Then I took Noah for ice cream. But we weren't done just yet. By the time autumn rolled into Portland with its soggy leaves and gold-filtered sun, I thought we were in the clear.
New job.
New school year. Noah was thriving. I had a team of 6 brilliant designers across Seattle and Portland. The nightmares came less often. And then, David filed an appeal. The grounds? Improper characterization of intent. Emotional bias influencing the court's custody judgment. New evidence suggesting I had been manipulating digital records. Classic David. Same arrogance, new packaging. But this time, he brought backup. A digital forensics expert who had reviewed the emails and documents we submitted and claimed metadata irregularities. Basically, he was accusing me of fabricating the very files that had buried him. Alyssa and I met over coffee the day the appeal landed on her desk. She slid it across the table like it was a napkin with mustard on it. He's playing dirty, she said, which means he's panicking. He's still broke, isn't he? I asked. Broke, banned, and back on his mom's couch. But she's lawyering up for him again. One last swing of the bat. I stirred my tea.
Calm.
Let him swing. Because here's what David didn't know. 6 weeks prior, while organizing a cloud archive for my new role, I'd stumbled across a backup folder David himself created. Years ago. It contained an entire photo trail of his affair with that Madrid intern. A screen recording of him editing metadata on PDFs because he'd wanted to hide the dates of his duplicity. A deleted chat log with his lawyer, bragging about how he'd probably win the appeal by just confusing the timeline. I had it timestamped, encrypted, witness verified. So when the court date for the appeal came, David walked in wearing a borrowed suit and a misplaced sense of control. I walked in with truth and a flash drive. When the judge asked for my rebuttal, I passed it to the clerk. 5 minutes into reviewing the contents, the judge interrupted David's lawyer. Mr. Reynolds, she said, tone glacial, you submitted this appeal in bad faith. You've wasted the court's time and resources. This isn't a petition. It's a tantrum dressed in legalese.
Case dismissed. Not just dismissed.
Sanctioned. David and Margaret were both fined for filing malicious litigation. Outside the courthouse, Alyssa and I sat in my car while Noah played with a toy drone in the park across the street. She turned to me. You didn't flinch once. I'm just tired, I said, of fighting shadows. You won't have to anymore. Margaret left Portland within a month. David? He ghosted everyone. Last I heard, he was in Tulsa, working at a boutique furniture store under the name Gabe Delaney. I could have tracked him. I could have pursued damages. But I didn't. Because there's something more powerful than revenge. Indifference. There's this myth that closure comes with a bow, neat, timely, symmetrical. But real closure? It's messy. It's uneven. It's what you find in the after, when the dust settles and you're left with a house full of echoes and the choice to turn them into music. It's been a year. Noah's in first grade now. He reads chapter books and eats his cereal dry because he says milk makes it squishy and weird. We painted his room in jungle green. His bookshelf holds both dinosaurs and my old sketch pads. And me? I lead a remote design team across 3 time zones. I speak at conferences about rebuilding after reputational sabotage. I mentor women who've been gaslit into silence. I still wake up some nights, heart racing, half expecting another ambush email or a legal twist. But then I hear Noah breathing down the hall. And I remember. We're safe. Margaret never apologized. Not once. But her name now rings hollow in the places that used to echo with her judgment. And David? He hasn't called. Hasn't written. And that silence? It's a gift. I never rebuilt our old life. I built a new one. One that doesn't depend on charm or approval or shared bank accounts. A life where I own my name, my choices, and every single pixel of my legacy. One night, after tucking Noah in, he asked, "Mom, are we still waiting for Dad?" I looked at him for a long time.
No, baby.
We're not waiting anymore. We're moving forward. He nodded like he understood more than he let on. Then he smiled. Can we get waffles tomorrow? Absolutely. Because that's what healing sounds like. Not courtroom gavel slams. Not applause. Not revenge. Just waffles. At sunrise. With someone you fought like hell to protect.